I'm joined by.
Me! My name's Sean. It's good to see you, sir. What's kicking? Little chicken.
So you may be thinking, "Hey, Terence, I haven't seen your face in like forever," and that's true, but with good reason. We were hoping to do a live stream last week, but we couldn't because I was horrendously sick. Um, and we spoke about illness a few months ago, actually, and I thought it was really funny because one of the things we spoke about was how men tend not to get help earlier on, and then the sickness gets longer, and that's exactly what I did last week. I was sick on Monday. My wife said you should go to the doctor. And I said no, I'll sleep it off tomorrow. I'm going to be 100%. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I eventually went to the doctor on Thursday evening, and the doctor said, if you came to me on Monday, we could have kicked this in 24 hours. The reality is right now, it's so deep in your lungs, it's going to take quite a few days to get out of your system. So I spent the whole of last week working through the illness, couldn't really speak much because I was coughing. The week before that, I had exams and tests to do. So this is not on Sean. It's all on me. This is my fault, and I apologize profusely.
I appreciate you so much from one day to the next. But right now, having you not only lay down on a sword, I think you thrust yourself at it, Terence. Um, do hope you in future seek help a little bit earlier. But it is good to see your face. You're looking vivacious, I think is the word I would use. Vivacious.
I'll take that word. I always feel like it means something like I think vivacious. I think like buxom and curvy in a wonderful way. But I'll take that. That's all good. I'm happy with that. How are you? No illnesses your side? No tests to do?
No tests, just the general, life. The test of life, the journey of life, the constant school of hard knocks on the streets there. Speaking of which, I'm feeling it now on my lip, and I know we're live streaming, so if you were to be watching, you'd be able to see this. But I can see that my lip is a little bit enlarged, the bottom
Who
lip. It's
who smacked
my
you? Who must
my
I?
gave me a nice
Oh,
headbutt, and yeah. Anyway, so I'm playing with that at the moment. And she
and
was a little bit ill last week, but yeah,
okay.
we seem to be getting over that now. So
Okay, well, I'm glad that you guys are getting through that. We're almost around about the halfway mark of the year, which is actually crazy if you think about it. Like in two
yeah.
weeks' time, it's going to be June, and dead of winter, 6 months done and dusted.
Mm.
Before you know it, in fact, it's going to be July. It's literally going to be happening that quickly, and so this is where you thought it would be a good idea for us to do this particular episode this week.
I did, and for exactly that reason, because towards the beginning of the year, we started off by saying we should choose a word for the year that we can sort of live up to and reflect on, or sort of set our intentions for based on this particular word. And when it dawned on me that we were nearly towards the middle of the year, I thought, well, maybe it's a good idea that we do exactly that. We reflect and make sure that we're staying the course. We can hold ourselves accountable. Um, and if we haven't done anything, that speaks towards our word, you still have 6 months to get there.
Would we be allowed at the end of this conversation to change our word of the year? Because I might be in a space where I feel like I need to change my word. Is that a bad thing? It's because I've tried it for half a year. I'm not going to beat my head against the wall, but I feel like I've been inspired. Actually, literally today, I heard a conversation, and I feel very inspired to change my word in a way that I think will make me happier.
You
Is
know
that
what? I don't remember reading a rule book when it comes to choosing a word for the year. So, yes, I will say that you may change your word.
fantastic? Well, we'll see. We'll see how we get towards the end of the conversation. So we recorded that episode literally like the second or third week of January. Um, I could barely remember that episode, but then after going back and listening to it and actually watching it, I realized that was one of the first video episodes we did, and it was also um, done via WhatsApp back and forth. It wasn't a recorded episode like this. It was just our conversation back and forth because we couldn't record because of load shedding. It was terrible load shedding. I was like, wow, this is the worst load shedding we're going to have all year. And now we're in the same space and we're still having terrible load shedding. But we've got more tools. We've got more tools to record. So we're fortunately going to um, keep this live. So that's good.
Yeah, a little bit more prepared now, nearly 6 months in, but exactly the same. When you sent me those video clips earlier today, I thought, goodness, that's what we were doing in January. I was walking out in the sunshine, sending voice notes back and forth because I didn't have internet access for long enough to be able to, as you quite rightly say, record an episode. And what a throwback immediately.
Yeah.
What was I doing? Oh, that's what we were doing. We were recording episodes for the podcast via WhatsApp. It felt very innovative at the time. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It broke some quantum physical impossibility, and we did it. We made it happen.
We made it happen, and we didn't do it again, fortunately, because it was a lot of back and forth.
Really hard.
It was very hard, but I did have to go back and listen because honestly, I wasn't entirely sure what my word was, which tells you how well I've been keeping it in mind, the forefront of my mind for the year. Should we play a small section from that episode? Are we able to do that?
Yes, we most certainly are, because technology is working with us tonight. And I'm going to play my word first, and I could tell you exactly what it is, but yes. I'll play it because, it's theatrics, shall we?
Yes, and also you gave the explanation behind why you chose that word. So
exactly.
This will be great to get your Sean of January 2023.
Okay, I think I'm getting closer to a word, Terence, because I'm taking into consideration last year, as you were saying earlier, and the feeling I'd like to have at the end of this year. I'm not sure that I'll be able to create such an awareness or such a manifestation that family and friends will look at me and go, wow, you had such a insert word kind of year. But maybe the word I'm choosing for 2023 is brave. And I say that on the back of 2022 because it was such a tumultuous year. Do you remember there was that post, I think it was the child psychologist from Durban, Naomi Holt. Do you want to hear more? Do you want us to go on? Doing the rounds.
No, let's stop there. So to give context to what you're saying at the beginning, you were responding to my thought that the way we could choose a word was by thinking about what we want other people to think of us, or like if at the end of 2023 people would describe Sean with one word, that should, like, whatever we want that word to be should be our word of the year. So yes. That's why you're saying you're not sure if this word other people would actually see necessarily, but your word was brave.
Brave, yes. And I think if I were to reflect now, that I think I've been brave through the year. I mean, in that clip and in that episode, you can go back and listen to it. I really do go on along about how I've changed careers. I'm stepping into a whole new direction. I have no idea what's going to go on there. I remember you had said back to me, Terence, that, the 7 years up until now, you would consider me to have been brave already. So, to choose the word brave seemed a little bit off kilter, or maybe not quite.
Yeah, it seems strange not strange, but it was odd, which is another word for strange, I guess, to choose a word to strive for that I was like, but you're already there. Like, I would already consider you to be brave. So how are you striving for courage? But you had a appropriate response, I guess.
Yeah, and when I think of we're now 5 months into the year, there are numerous things that I've done this year that I would never have considered myself to have A, the opportunity to do, or B, to throw myself into them. So not only do we do this podcast as often as we possibly can, and it's hella fun, yeah. I host my own podcast, which I've really struggled to keep going, but I have stuck to it. I've not withered away.
The last episode is definitely worth listening to, by the way. If you haven't listened to Some Assembly Required, the links are in the show notes.
Thank you very much. But I'm now also a producer and show engineer for another podcast. with two keynote speakers and authors that host that. So that's pretty cool. I also produce stuff for an Australian psychologist. So that's also very cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I got to speak on a panel about podcasting at the beginning of the year that I honestly didn't see myself being strong enough to do. Hello,
That's Daisy.
puppy in
Daisy
the picture.
suddenly realized that she's in camera. She's very shy. Yeah. So you're speaking to the Australian psychologist.
Yeah,
You started your own newsletter.
and I'm about to launch a second one, Terence.
What?
I
How?
know.
I mean, you see. So
I'm
this is the thing. This is the one issue that you raised, right? Was where does being brave become being kind of stupid?
It was something that I raised, and I think I'm teetering there at the moment.
You're in that gray area where, ooh.
So, staying on the brave though,
Yeah.
I pitched to do podcasting live at an expo, and they love the idea. We're
Nice.
just finalizing the nitty gritty, but by the end of next week, we'll know whether or not it's happening or not because the expo is next week. So I'm either there or I'm not. And having gotten it this far, that feels like something that was outside of my realm of ability or possibility
Yeah.
and putting yourself forward to do something of that nature. So, in that regard, I think I have been pretty brave up until this point. Now, as you quite rightly say, teetering on stupidity.
And unfortunately, it's one of those things where you probably would only know that you've gone into the realm of stupid once you're there. Like it's not a
You
case
look
of,
back.
yeah, you look back and go, oh, the line was 50 meters that way. Um, at any point with the multiple things, like there's so many things that I literally cannot remember the list that you've just given us because there's so many things in that list. Was there a hesitation? Was there a feeling of I'm not the person to do this? This is not going to work out. All those aspects that would stop you from being brave. Were you feeling that at any point?
Yes. I know we're live streaming at the moment, so if you're watching this, you're going,
Just like-
I gave you a cue a long time ago, Terence. How did you not read it? Um, you know, I've been thinking a little bit about that recently as well, because I think I chose the word brave, if I look back in hindsight, because there's an element of imposter syndrome that I know it lurks within all of us.
Mm.
And just the other day, somebody was reiterating to me that imposter syndrome really is when you have the ability to do something, you have all of the cred, you know how to make a lasagna, but then when your neighbor says to you, "Please, won't you make me a lasagna?" You're like, I really don't. I'm not very good at it,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
But your family raves about the lasagna you make, and now you're second guessing yourself. And I think that's a very watered down version of explaining what imposter syndrome is. But for all intent and purposes, I am very capable of putting together audio content. I'm very capable of doing stuff that, sits me in the same realm as radio and as in coaching and all of those things. I can do that stuff. I know I can do that stuff. But putting myself forward for those things is
exactly.
very scary.
That is the
Very scary.
and the problem with that kind of imposter syndrome. To stick with your lasagna
And now,
analogy, because of your imposter syndrome, your neighbor then misses out on a delicious lasagna, right? And and the same happens with the creative stuff. Like if you let your imposter syndrome get the better of you, we wouldn't have a very useful and interesting podcast newsletter. We wouldn't have all the other things that you're doing. We wouldn't have this podcast. It's all the things where people would be missing out. And even if it's one other person that gets a little bit of enjoyment, that person's life would be just that one iota less interesting or great or better. And that's like the real downside of imposter syndrome. Is like it's not just that you don't get to do the thing that you love to do. It's also that everyone else doesn't get to enjoy the fruits of your passion.
mm,
So I think having brave or being brave as like the target for the year is such a useful thing, not just for yourself, but like for the rest of us, because
Oh,
we want the fruits of a brave Sean. It's like selfish of like, yes, Sean, be brave because then I get cool stuff. you know.
oh, good. Okay. Well, then I will make sure to continue to be brave for the rest of 2023. Um, I, yeah, so far I think it's been a good word. It's been a good fit, and I have done my best. I can't say that I think of the word every time a decision comes across my path, but once I've made that decision, I go, yes, that was brave.
Yes.
Again, next week it might be, yeah, that was stupid.
But that's it.
I was going to say, I can give you one last example of terms of being brave in the fact that I've set stronger boundaries for myself as
Mm,
well. So I know I've just listed all of these things that I'm trying to do and look forward to doing. But simultaneously, someone will, I don't know, ask me for a reduced quote or ask me to do something that normally I would have tried to figure out how I would do because how I would fit it in because that's what I feel I should be doing.
yeah.
I don't know why I feel like I should be emceeing something when I really can't, or I have this responsibility that I have to live up to.
I can't
These
let
people,
someone down. I can't let people down.
yeah, and I've stuck to those boundaries. I've been brave enough to say, actually, no, I'm going to let this one slide. This isn't for me. The timing isn't right. Come back to me in a while. I mean, that podcast, the one that I worked on with Eddie Jordan and Dave Coulthard with the F1 thing, that
Oh,
came out
cool.
of left field. And can I just say that I very nearly said to them, no, thanks. It's not going to work. And at that stage, I didn't know who I would be working with. Also, I only found out who I was working with the day that I drove to that venue. We can save that story for another episode. Bravery. I said,
Yeah.
okay, I can do this. I can figure it out. And I did. And that's been very worth it.
Now,
Choosing the word.
you did mention though that it's not something that you are necessarily like cognizant of in the moment of making that decision. But it feels like that may have been a moment when where you were like, there's a brave option and there's the safe option.
Yes. In that instance, most definitely, because they contacted me a week prior, and it's a UK company. It's loads of emails back and forth, but it's also radio silence. So at one point they're like, uh, "Do you have X equipment? This is what we need." Sure, I can do this.
Right.
A day goes by. Then there are three emails back and forth the next day because now they're trying to get things sorted. And then the 2 days later, you've still heard nothing. So I don't know whether this is happening or not. I'm getting ready to go, you know what? These guys are messing me around. It's a lot easier for me to just say, no, sorry, it's not going to work, right? Or I'm not sure that the equipment I have is going to work because it's not the same as what they're using in the UK. And they're very particular about having the same equipment on both sides of the planet so that the audio quality sounds the same. Nitty gritty, technical details. I'll save you that. And there was definitely an instance where I was going to email them and say, I don't think this is going to work. My schedule's a bit full. My daughter's carer, all of the excuses that I could possibly come up with. I don't have a laptop. And then I thought, but if I charge them, I can afford the thing that I need to make this happen. And that was a very brave decision
Wow.
because that's not normal Sean. Normal
Yeah.
Sean was have everything must be ready, and then they say, "Can you do it?" And I go, "Yes, I have all of the things."
Yeah.
So yeah, very calculated.
And you would have I mean again missed out on an opportunity to speak to some big hitters, all that experience, and be able to afford a new laptop in the
Yeah,
mix.
yeah,
Um and I suppose with any space, that especially the kind of space where you're in, where you're kind of starting and restarting a career, or at least a new phase of your career, that does require bravery to get the momentum going. The ball doesn't shift by itself. You don't get the equipment suddenly. No one's gonna just wake up one morning and like, yeah, here's 100,000 rands worth of equipment. Like there's a level of having to back yourself and take risks, and you've been able to do that. So congratulations on keeping your word alive for
thank
2023
you
so
very
far.
much.
It's been a good
Thank
first 5 months for you.
Yeah, it's been a powerful first 5 months. But now I'm very intrigued because I, honestly, Terence, I cannot remember what your word was, that
I
the
don't
word that
blame.
you've chosen.
I don't blame you.
And because you've started this episode off by saying, is there room to change it?
you're you're
I,
you're wondering.
yeah,
You're wondering where we're going with this.
really intrigued. Yes. Can we play your clip back now, please?
Please, let's play my clip and then I'll explain where my head was at the time.
Alrighty, here we go. Back to January of 2023.
Uh, well, look. Regardless, I think yeah, you have been very brave and continue to be very brave, and so I'm glad that you decided to say yes to that podcasting panel because you have a lot to offer. So
That
you
was
have
in
to be brave to
February.
say
Yeah,
yes to
yeah.
that. And I guess people only think of you as brave or stupid depending on how successful you are. Success is
I
determination.
was so
But
wise in January.
who cares what other people think? You feel brave, and that's the important thing. Okay, enough stalling for me and for my word. And I've been thinking about it a lot over the last few days as we've been having this conversation back and forth. And I think the word for me is trust. And the reason why I'm going with trust is I know you're going to ask me this, like, why trust,
My
Terence?
trust, Terence.
Um, I think I want to trust other people more, like other people's ability, other people's goodness. I want to trust that people are essentially good and that they aren't going to mess me around. I want to trust that people are able to do good work with my colleagues. I want to trust that if I'm hiring someone to do work for me, that they're able to do what they've promised. Um, More than all of that, though, I also want to learn or focus on trusting myself.
Ooh.
Like at this point in my life, in my late 30s, I know what I'm about, I know what I'm capable of, and I want to be able to trust that I have the wisdom to make decisions and to back myself with those decisions because I've gone through enough life, I've done enough big things to know
Okay,
that I can.
okay, Terence. Enough of enough of Terence. Enough of Terence in January. Um,
Did you just
so
give you a talking to there? This is like,
yeah, yeah. I feel like I've just been hit over the head by myself from 5 months ago. Um, okay, so some context though. Some context. I send you that message, and if you if you go back and you watch the video on our Instagram account, you'll see it's summertime. It's a beautiful day. I think it was like 27 degrees Celsius. So like not super hot, just right. I'm under the shade of my beautiful plane tree. Lots of like a canopy of green. There's a slight breeze. Work hasn't been that hectic that yet. I haven't started studying for the year yet. The kids are at school. Like everything is just right for that day. Okay, so
I remember.
I'm in a very optimistic mood now. Flash forward to the middle of May. It's cold, it's miserable, work's been hectic, studying's been hectic. All of those leaves that were so beautiful against this wonderful shade have now fallen, and I have to rake them every single day. And there's a huge pile of dead leaves in my front garden. So it's to have the same level of optimism in people is a little bit difficult. But there has been some ways where I think I've managed to keep that word alive. So I wouldn't say so much that I trust that people are able to do the right thing or to do good work, all that kind of stuff I was saying, like trusting in other people. More like I think I'm at a point where I realize that people will be whatever they are and I can't change that. So yeah, so there's a slight difference there. So it's more trusting my ability to like deal with people in whatever space they're in. If that makes sense.
I hear you. Yeah. And like you already say, trusting yourself, because that was towards the end there, just before we cut it off.
Yeah.
You were talking about how you need to learn to trust your own instincts and trust trust your abilities to read situations, or to get involved when you need to, or to hang back if you should, or so that makes sense for me that you would say exactly what you're saying now. The the understanding that you have the abilities to let things be as they are and trust yourself in that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I can trust my ability to cope with the world the way it is,
Mm.
and to cope with people the way they are. And I know this seems like, oh man, Terence must have had like really bad run-ins with a bunch of people over the last 5 months, and I really haven't. Like, my relationships, I would say, across the board are quite healthy. In fact, they're probably healthier than they've ever been. Um, and 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 maybe there is a case for that, the focus of that word being useful in that, like, people feel they respond well when they feel trusted. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
when I put effort into a friendship because I trust that I'll get a valuable response out of it, or I I'm with my wife. Every time I add more trust into a relationship, it always feeds back positively as well. So I think walking through the world with a certain level of trust is useful. The other thing that I said, that we didn't play now, but was later on in the episode, was that it is less effort to walk through the world trusting, because you're not on your guard the whole time. You're not trying to figure out where you're going to get, schneid by someone who's going to mess you around. You're not always hustling to make sure that you're one step ahead of everyone, which just seems like an exhausting way of life for
Sure.
me. So there is a calmness and relaxation that comes with trusting, with being more trusting. I still struggle with trusting my own instincts and trusting my own decisions. I'm very good at making decisions and making decisions quickly. It's 6 months down the line that I struggle to trust myself. And I also struggle to trust that I can do hard things. So, like I said, I'm studying, and it was it was like a huge hurdle for me to get, like, no, it's hard, but it's fine that it's hard. You're able to do hard things, and getting to that point has always been, that's always been tough, and I'm not sure if I'm entirely there yet. Like, I don't know what else I need to do. It's like, it's weird because I trust other people very, like, it doesn't take a lot for me to trust people, but I don't know what else I have to do to prove to myself that I'm trustworthy. So it's a bit of a mess, and I don't like that feeling, and that's why I want to change the word.
Well, I mean, before you come up with that second word or what the alternative word might be, I think there's a level of, I keep hearing you talk about trust and the way the world is and the way things are, and maybe without interjecting too much and giving you a second word, maybe the feeling there is some level of acceptance, and accepting that the way things are the way things are,
Mm.
and you trust yourself to be able to move and navigate through those, right? So it's not different to trust. Maybe it's just a lens that says, I see this, I hear this, it is what it is, but I also know that I can get through this, or I can help other people get through this, or I can come up with a solution, I'll make a decision, we'll move forward. I remember you saying back in January, and you've just reminded me that, you would do the research necessary, you'd make the decision, and then you'd make said purchase, for argument's sake. But then a couple of months later, you're like, did I make the right purchase? Should I have done that? Should I not have done that? And I think at the time we had said to ourselves, one another, we had coached in our therapy session as we, that you made the best decision with the information that you had at the time. And you can't berate yourself for not knowing something that you couldn't possibly have known, because you did all the due diligence that was required at the time.
Yeah, and that's great advice that I give to other people all the time.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, and so it works well for other people. I don't know. I don't see how it applies to me, though. I don't get the.
Right.
It can't, I'm not like other people that needs the same common sense advice that we give to them. So I do think that the word that I have in mind is it's along those lines, but might take a little bit more of a lighter, positive track.
Okay.
So I was watching an interview recently, like literally the last 2 days. I was watching an interview with Michael J. Fox, the actor who had early onset Parkinson's.
Yes.
And
This is going.
yeah, out of that interview, there was one line that he said, which was like, you know, when someone says something, and I don't like quotes. I don't like, I always find that little phrases of never seem to really like encapsulate a feeling for me. And this is one of those times where it just felt like a couple of words nailed everything for me completely. And the line was, gratitude makes, I need to get this right, gratitude makes optimism sustainable. Gratitude makes optimism sustainable. And what I love about that is that it is not saying the world is perfect and that you should be optimistic because things are just, it's so easy to be optimistic. It's actually saying it's kind of hard to be optimistic. And the one effective tool we have to maintain your optimism is to work on gratitude, is to be grateful for what you have more than focusing on what you don't have. And I love that because I do feel very privileged. I do feel like I have so many things to feel grateful for, just from a physical point of view, like the fact that I have the time and the resources and the friends to sit down and have this conversation with you is something that should enable gratitude. And if I can have gratitude, then that means that I can be optimistic about the present and the future, which is in South Africa, it can be very hard. Like, that's something I've been really struggling with, is like, how do you have children in a world like this that feels like everything's going to poop? And well, if you're not grateful for what you do have, it is very hard. But if you're actually really grateful for what you have, wow, this is like worth sharing. This world, there's potential for good in the world because I have good in my life. So if I was going to be allowed to change my word from trust, I would change it to gratitude, because I think that unlocks a lot of the things that I'm hoping to achieve.
Well, if I am considered to be the word of the year fairy, and I have a hang of a lot of fairy dust in my back pocket, I would sprinkle it all over you. You're welcome to change to gratitude.
Fantastic.
I love that word. I love that word, in all its nuances. And you're quite right. That interview, I haven't had a chance to watch the entire thing. That quote I've seen it several times over social media, and I've watched that particular clip, and watching him deliver that line is so poignant and moving. And I think so many of us watching him say that, it will resonate with each of us, probably for slightly different reasons, but it'll resonate because we realize that there are things that we do have to be grateful for. Yeah. And when we put that in perspective, it really does. I don't know, either it puts the blinkers on so it allows for you to focus again and go, actually, there's all this other stuff going on. I really shouldn't be looking at that. I should really just be getting down to being grateful for what I have, for what's in front of me, for what the opportunities have presented, the skills that I have, the innate talents that I've been born with, whatever the things might be. There is plenty to be grateful for. There is always a silver lining. You've just got to look for it.
I love that. That's exactly what I think. For me, what really resonated was that you're not ignoring because so often with words of optimism or when we talk about gratitude and being thankful for what you have and looking on the bright side and silver linings, it can come across very much like you must ignore all the bad things that are going on in the world. And I'm like, no, we mustn't ignore the bad things going on in the world. We have to actively fight against the bad things that are going on in the world. We have to try and make the world better. But if you're not optimistic, you'll never fight because it's like, well, what's the point of trying, right? And I think there's a big push. I think there are a lot of people, I see it all over the place, people like who cares about changing the environment? It's all going to hell anyway. Who cares about better business practices? Everyone, like, who cares about trying to fix politics? All politicians are the worst. And it's like, well, that may be true at the moment, but you have to be optimistic if you're ever going to try and change that. And this just feels like such a strong, like, jab in the arm. It's like a steroid boost for your optimism in a way that doesn't ignore all of that stuff, but does give you the good stuff you need to keep going and to keep being optimistic. Because I love being optimistic. It makes me feel good to feel like there's hope, So.
Yeah, I used to bandy about, like, at the end of every show I did for a couple of years, I used to say, enthusiasm is contagious. Let's start an epidemic.
Oh.
And yeah, I love that. I don't know where I had read it. They weren't my words. I can't imagine myself being so poetic and wisdomous. But there was something about it that made me feel, we can take this on. We just have to be, a pep in the step. And life has dealt us all significant blows. It's not always easy to be enthusiastic about stuff. And there'll be moments where you're very enthusiastic about a particular project, but to make it sustainable. And I think that for me was what was so powerful about Michael J. Fox's his quote, or if we were to quote him now, is the way he phrases that gratitude makes optimism sustainable. Gratitude allows for the optimism to stick around because you're being grateful for whatever is in front of you, whatever you've had, whatever you're working on, whatever the context might be. It then sustains that and it keeps it alive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, love it. Can I hold you to that word then? And you can no backsies now when we get to September, hey?
Okay, yeah. So I only have I've used my last changey. Okay, I've got it. I think I can hold on to this, and I think that's going to unlock all the other things. And ironically, a more grateful Terence means a more optimistic Terence, which makes me a more trusting Terence. So actually, it'll come full circle.
Look at that.
There we go.
We got there again.
Yeah. Shauno, thank you so much for spending time with me, man. I always enjoy our chats together. And thank you so much for listening or for watching. If you watch this on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, of course, you can catch us on the YouTubes, on the Instagrams, and on the TikToks. Just search for Have You Asked Your Dad, and we'll pop up wherever. Give us a follow. In fact, if you look down right now, Sean, you can't see this, but we have graphics coming across our page right now, giving you all the handles of where you can find us. So that is it. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you soon. Cheers.
Till the next time. Ciao.